Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite eyeshadows in my collection. My friend Dominica requested this probably 10 months ago now, and I'm only just getting around to it now. These are definitely some of my most favorite ones, but I'm looking at them now going, oh no, what if I've missed something that I truly love more? Anyway, these are the ones that came to mind when I was thinking of filming this video, so that's the ones that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to kick it off by talking about probably the most boring shade in here, and it's from the Too Faced Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette, and it's the original namesake for the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, so I think you already know what I'm going to be mentioning. It's the Peanut Butter shade in here. I feel like this color kind of started off the warm crease trend for me. Prior to using peanut butter in my crease, I had always really stuck to using more neutral tone browns, sometimes grays, which can look okay, but for whatever reason, I just never really liked the cooler tone browns on me, and I couldn't really figure out why, which sounds a little bit silly, but when I was first getting into wearing shadows that were more of like a gradient type color, you know, where you've got like a crease color that kind of accentuates the whole look, I was really only wearing cool tone colors there. And when I finally tried peanut butter in the crease, I was like, whoa, it's like a whole new world just opened up to me. And I'm like, wow, so I can wear warm tone browns in the crease and it actually looks good? Who knew? That seems like such a basic thing to say, but when I first got this palette, I hadn't ever really thought about it, because this palette, I don't know, how old is this thing now? 6, 7 years old, maybe something like that. Yeah, and it really took trying out that shade in my crease to make me realize how much I like warm tone browns in that area. And because of that, this shade is forever a favorite of mine. I reach for it quite a bit, and I have reached for it more, I think, in the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, just because that palette by itself is a little bit more of an enjoyable color scheme for me. That being said, I love the Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette, and I'm so sad that they discontinued it a few years ago. This thing is an absolute treasure in my collection. But yeah, the Peanut Butter shade in here, total winner, and it really did open my eyes to using a warm brown in the crease. Let me stick with Too Faced here for a little bit. I'm going to talk about the Sweet Peach palette, which has two of my favorite shades in here. The first one is Luscious up here, which is that kind of like perfect champagne color. I feel like everyone has one type of shimmery champagne that works best for them. And for some people, it has a little bit more of a golden edge. Some people, it's a little bit more of a silver edge. For me, it kind of falls into this more like, how do I even describe it? I guess it's a little bit peach tinted, but not really. Like, there is a hint of pink peach in there, but it's not too much. And whenever I wear that shadow on my lid, I'm just really happy with it. It is very reflective. It is very luminescent. It just really works for me. And even though I have tried an abundance of champagne colors over the years, most of them I've discarded because I just didn't really feel like they worked out well for me. And then when I finally tried the one in the Sweet Peach palette, I realized just how much this one really works for me. And the scent of this palette also gets me. I keep getting whiffs of it as I'm sitting here filming. And I mean, of course, the fact that this palette is scented in the scent that I like also really makes that eyeshadow very attractive to me. But yeah, Luscious in here is that perfect champagne color for me. And I've never really found a dupe. And I know people will say that they've found dupes of like pretty much these basic colors, right? But when it really comes down to it, there's something about how this reacts on my skin tone that I've never actually found a true dupe for it in anything that I've ever owned. And not that I'm necessarily going out there trying to find dupes of shadows, because I like what I like and I don't need backups of them. This one has remained pretty original and pretty unique for me in my collection. Now, sticking with this palette, another color that I'm truly obsessed with in here is Candied Peach, which is this like neon peach type color. I honestly want to call it more of a coral, really. Like, it's just so luminescent. Now, the shadow here does actually have a little bit of pink sparkle in it, and you will see there is pink sparkle in the swatch. But really, in practice, I don't feel like it actually shows up with the sparkle in it. I feel like that kind of dusts away, which is fine. It predominantly performs as a matte shadow, which is what I tend to use it as. That color, Candied Peach, in the crease is one of the most beautiful things ever. It wasn't something that I think I had ever really done until I got my hands on this palette. And then I saw Candied Peach and I was like, okay, that could make a different crease color. And then I put it there and I was like, I can't believe I've never done something like this before. It's just luminescent. It's bright. And while I like neutrals at times, I do tend to veer more towards bright, colorful eyeshadows. And that, even though it's quite bright and gives me that aspect of brightness that I'm really looking for in my eyeshadows, I can wear that paired with neutrals. I will often pair it with Luscious. And it just, I don't know, it looks not only seamless, but it looks neutral, but with like, I guess, with a pop of color, and it just makes me really happy. So if I need to be wearing something that's a little bit more neutral overall, I can still use Candied Peach in the crease, and it looks relatively, like, let's say work appropriate, although I don't really believe in that term. I will wear basically anything to work. But if you were somebody who was worried about it being too bright for that area, don't be. It really does tend to look a little bit more natural than I was expecting, but still have that inherent pop of color. Okay, now that I've talked about some neutral colors, let's move on to the more colorful side of things. Hands down, I think this is my #1 favorite in my entire collection. This is the INGLOT-AMC Shine in the shade 24. I always mention this, but I really wish they had actual names as opposed to numbers, because numbers are not that exciting. This looks, I guess, kind of boring on camera, but holy smokes, this thing is so freaking gorgeous. This is a pale, shimmery mint that is somewhat translucent, but has that like reflecting ivory type color. It's the kind of shade that looks beautiful on your lid, but also makes a really good either like inner corner highlighter or even facial highlighter, which I've never actually used this for, and I really should at some point. So I tend to use this just on my lids. I mean, I guess that's what we're talking about. We're talking about eyeshadows, right? This is wonderful. This pairs with so many cool toned teals and purples that I have in my collection, which I'm about to just show you because it makes a really beautiful eye look, all three of those together. And I never get bored of this. This is actually my second pan. I had hit quite a lot of pan on my previous one, and then I think I took it out to film a video at one point and I smashed the whole thing. It fell on the floor and broke into pieces, and there was no salvaging it, so I had to go out and buy a new one because I was not going to live without this shadow in my collection. And these are not small pans either. For me to hit pan on something like this when it's like 3.2 grams of product, like that's wild. Most eyeshadows are between 1 and 1.5 grams. Says a lot, and the fact that I had to go out and buy a new one speaks volumes of this. I really wish that the camera was picking up what I'm seeing, but it's just this beautiful pale mint color. It's kind of like one of those like mermaid greens, but like toned down quite a bit. Anyway, I always recommend Inglot. I think their shadows are fantastic, and this is my absolute favorite color in my entire collection. The other Inglot shadow I need to mention is this bright orange one. You can see I've got a massive dip in it. This is the Inglot eyeshadow in the shade, I'm pretty sure it's AMC Shine, but it only says 15 on the back. This is wonderful. This is a shimmery orange with a gold reflect to it. This is the color that I wear on my birthday every single year. I wear this on the lid with like a red matte crease color, also by Inglot. But going back to this shade, this one is just absolutely luminous. I first saw it posted, I think, on Temptalia's blog years and years ago, and I couldn't believe the color that was visible in her photograph of it, because she really managed to display not only like the orangeness of it, but also the gold reflect to it. When I was initially making my list of Inglot eyeshadows that I really wanted to purchase before I owned anything by the brand, this was at the top of that list simply because of those pictures on Temptalia's website. Like, it was just so beautiful. Now, this does remain like a lid shade for me. I pretty much only really pair it with a red in the outer corner, or maybe some like more deeper burnt auburn type colors. But this is just absolutely wonderful. I'm always happy whenever I put this on my lid, and that's why I've continued to wear the same eyeshadow for my birthday for like, geez, how many years now? It might be like 8 years strong that I've been wearing this on my lid, just because it really makes me happy. Okay, so I mentioned that with the INGLOT-AMC Shine 24 color, I tend to really marry it with like turquoise and purple colors, and there's two specific colors from the Urban Decay Electric palette that are my absolute favorites that I pair it with, and these colors are unreal, just absolutely unreal. So the two that I'm talking about are Fringe over here and then Urban. We'll talk about Urban a little bit. Let's talk about Fringe first. This color is something else. Now, it is a shimmery teal color, but it's quite deep, so you can actually put it in the outer corner of your eye and it'll still deepen up that area without making it a little bit too reflective, because some people are worried about that. What I tend to do with this color though is I wear it on the center of my lid with INGLOT-AMC Shine 24 on the inner corner and use that to blend between that and the purple shade over here called Fringe. Now these are both shimmery, but for whatever reason they seem to work really well in that outer corner area. So again, do not be worried about putting shimmers in the outer corner. I know people kind of come down on doing that, but honestly, if you like it, just wear what you want. For me, I will put a shimmer in the outer corner if it's quite deep. So for me, like Fringe and Urban are quite deep and tend to darken up that area for me. So that's what I prefer. Now, the texture on these two shadows is buttery and soft and smooth. And this is one of those powder pigment shadow things. It's not necessarily eye safe, but I have never had an issue with it. And Fringe has been, I think, replicated in Urban Decay's palettes. Didn't they re-put it in After Dark too? I don't know if it's any current palettes, but it is absolutely stunning. And then bringing it over to Urban, this is a shimmery deep purple that I have never found a dupe for. There is nothing in my collection that seems to be that opaque and yet slightly shimmery, and be actually blendable in a purple. I feel like purples, I know that purples are a problem. We always talk about this on YouTube. They are problematic and they are often not fun to play with because they just don't have a tendency to blend that well. This one is flawless. It's seamless. I don't have any issues with it. I don't know what they put in this one compared to all the other purples that I've managed to try in my life, but this one is phenomenal. And it's just that right tone of purple too that I seem to really enjoy. I don't find a lot of purples are quite this kind of, I guess I would call it royal purple. Purples tend to be more like this one over here, like just a little bit more subdued, a little bit less rich, but this one is so rich, so deep, and just applies so freaking well. Honestly, it's flawless. Those two colors in this palette, freaking phenomenal. Oh yeah, another Too Faced eyeshadow. This one is from Life's a Festival, and it's called Mystic Rain. This shadow came out of left field for Too Faced for me as far as I'm concerned. I have never seen them put out a duochrome like this before. So this is like, if you look at it from some angles, it looks like a very pale teal minty color, but it's really more of a purple. So you can put it on your lid and you see a purple from some angles, and sometimes you see a really pale teal shift to it. It's wild. I don't think I've seen this color in a mainstream brand ever. Somebody, I think, did recently point out that there were some indie brands who were making colors that were similar, but in terms of mainstream, easy to access type brands, I have never seen this sort of like pale, oh, it's so pretty, teal to purple, and there's a little bit of pink in there too. It's wonderful. I mean, I've talked about this palette quite a bit over the years, and this whole thing is rather good, but this shadow is so unique. It's so lovely. It's the one I've definitely reached for the most in this palette, just because it's so wonderful to use. It is truly just a special, special color. And I wish they launched more items that were like this, you know, something a little bit more unique as opposed to their consistent neutral palettes that they keep putting out. But yeah, Mystic Rain in the Life's a Festival palette. The next shadow I'm going to mention is one by Makeup Geek, and I used to be a really big Makeup Geek fan, and I'm pretty sure this shadow has been discontinued because they did reformulate their entire line and they now come in square pans. But I am from the heyday of the circular pans by Makeup Geek, and this shadow is by far my favorite that they've made, and I've reached for this quite a bit. So this is called Razzleberry, which is a very sweet name, but the color of this is, look at that. It's a bright red with gold shimmer shot throughout the whole thing. This is wonderful. I don't even know if they've replicated it in their new colors because I feel like their new colors are really rather boring. They're not nearly as exciting as they used to be. And man, I hope they've replicated this one, but thinking about it, I really haven't heard about it in quite a few years. So if you have this one in your collection, pull it out. It's a lot of fun to use. This is one that I do tend to use more in the outer corner area because even though the gold shimmers through here, it does tend to somewhat mattify on your eye, which is strange because it's not like the glimmer flecks really disappear, but somehow for whatever reason in that area it just kind of like takes on a little bit more of a matte-esque look. But I have used it on the lid. I use it in the outer corner. It's just one that I reach for a lot because the red is so beautiful, and I think this was at a time where red eyeshadow was less accessible, so I was really excited by this one when it first came out, and I've just reached for it a lot too throughout the years. So this is another one of my absolute favorites, and I'm sad if you can't get your hands on it anymore. I'm sorry. All right, the very last one I'm going to talk about is another super unique shade for a brand that I don't think usually releases that many unique type colors like Too Faced. It's from Tarte's, what is this called? Be a Mermaid and Make Waves palette. So this came out a few years ago, and the shadows in here are mostly quite neutral, pretty normal for Tarte, I would say, but the one stunner in here is this shadow called Bubbles. Now, like the shadow in the Too Faced Life's a Festival palette, I have to say that there's not that many shadows that are released like this in mainstream brands. So in looking at it in the pan, it's a deep maroon with a bright blue reflect. Now, sometimes in swatches, it can come across as that like blue-brown type pigment that we've seen a lot before, or like greeny brown type thing that MAC made famous years ago. But really in practice, this has a much more maroon tint. Oh, you can kind of see it there. Haha, there we go. So it's more of a maroon base with a bright blue reflect to it. So freaking stunning. And what a winner out of this palette too. Because like for the most part, this palette is quite neutral. If you get rid of this bottom row, like you're looking at any other Tarte palette that's been released on the market in like the last 5 years, right? But then you add those colors and it's a stunner. But this one, Bubbles, which is such a cute name too, is the real winner in this palette. And again, it's not something that I've really seen mainstream brands do. I think I've heard of indie brands producing something similar. But this is really unique for Tarte, and what an absolutely stunning color. So whenever I reach for this palette, I always am thinking of Bubbles, and every time I'm like, oh, just do a different look, like use the other shadows that are in this palette. And I'm like, no, don't. Bubbles is so unique, keep going back to that. So I usually end up pairing it with, it looks like Shipwreck over here, because the colors just really play well together. Okay, so that is it for my top 10 favorite shadows in my collection. Those are the ones, again, that really just came to mind when I thought about what are the ones that I really love the most. So I'm happy to have talked about them with you today. So that's gonna be it for me. Maybe you can let me know some of your favorite eyeshadow colors and I can check them out. Thanks for joining me, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye.